as the sturdy dwarf ship Grimnir's Resolve crossed the Black Gulf and neared the port of Barakvar. It was engulfed by a fierce tempest that seemed to rise from the very depths of the sea. Towering waves battered the ironclad vessel, and howling winds tore at its sails, challenging the renowned craftsmanship of its dwarf makers. Yet under the skillful command of Captain Thorgin Oakshield, the crew navigated through the storm's wrath with determination. Despite the relentless assault of nature's forces, Grimnir's Resolve held its course, the dwarfs working tirelessly to keep their ship afloat. The storm had lasted for a few days, as it had started when they were still in the open sea. Eventually, though, the storm abated, revealing the rugged silhouette of Barakvar's fortified port. With only minor damage to its proud hull, the ship limped into the harbour. In the aftermath of the storm that had wreaked havoc across seemingly the entire region of the Border Princes, the port of Barakvar was bustling with recovery efforts. It was reported that roads across the region were damaged, some bridges were deemed unstable for heavy loads, and that many settlements had suffered in one way or another from the heavy storm. Amidst the chaos, news arrived that a contingent of dwarf merchants with supplies and artifacts who had ventured to Karazakarak had not returned. They had been missing for a considerable time, and a search party was being assembled. When the group of dwarf merchants set out for their expedition, they knew their journey would be fraught with peril, particularly as their path led through the ominous Forest of Gloom. This dense and shadowy woodland is notorious across the Border Princes for its treacherous underfoot and malevolent presence of goblins. The Forest of Gloom, surrounded in perpetual mist and tangled overgrowth, is a stronghold of a particularly vicious goblin tribe, known for their cunning ambushes and relentless harassment of any who dare traverse their darkened realm. Yet the dwarfs were stubborn and experimented. The group of merchants had made the trip to the capital stronghold many times before, and this was nothing new to them. Yet the storm that had just punished the lands had been a lot heavier than usual. Perhaps that had complicated things for them. In any case, the dwarves of Barakvar determined that something had to be done. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the elders of Barakvar assembled a rescue team, composed of some of their best trackers and warriors. Leading the rescue expedition was Lord Jagras Cragmaker, a dwarf lord renowned for his strategic acumen and courage. Lord Cragmaker, whose family lineage boasted generations of warriors and defenders of dwarf strongholds, was a skilled fighter and a wise leader that cared for his own people. He was considered to be the ideal candidate to spearhead this critical mission. With the support of Durik Granitefoot and his seasoned rangers, Lord Cragmaker was determined to track the lost merchants, even pierce the shadows of the Forest of Gloom if necessary, to bring their lost kin home. The group was tasked to venture into the storm-battered landscape where many roads had turned to mire. Their mission was clear: find and return with their kin, ensuring no dwarf was left behind in the unforgiving wilderness of the Border Princes. The dwarfs began their journey. Durik Granitefoot and his rangers advanced before the main force. Their keen eyes scanned the landscape, picking up subtle signs of passage, broken twigs, disturbed soil, and faint trails left behind. A unit of gyrocopters that would help on the search efforts when visibility allowed flew above the group. If the rescue force reached the dense forest, and the merchants hadn't been found by then the gyrocopters would return to Barakvar. At least that was the plan. In the meantime, they provided valuable information on the open surroundings. Lord Cragmaker, with his long white beard, marched on. He was well equipped and motivated to bring back the lost group. He personally knew many of the merchant dwarfs as friends, and he was confident that they were going to find them. Behind him, his force advanced. Miners were part of the group. Equipped with blasting charges and their sharp pikes, they carried all the tools needed in case the merchants were trapped under some rubble or else. With a heavy storm that had fallen in the region, and with many places flooded, nothing could be discarded. Well-armoured dwarf warriors marched with disciplined resolve, the heavy armour clanking rhythmically with each step. Clad in layers of armour that gleamed under the sun, these dwarves exuded an air of ancient strength. A unit of doom-seekers, some of the most fearless and fevered among the slayers, marched with a singular fierce determination etched on their rugged faces. Their wild orange hair and ornate tattoos stood stark against their bare muscled torsos, reminders of their oath to seek death in the glory of combat against the mightiest of foes. They marched on, carrying with them massive axes chained to them, so they never lost a hold on their weapon. Finally, a unit of thunderers, the renowned riflemen of the dwarf armies, advanced with methodical precision, their deadly rifles cradled in their arms and massive shields attached to their backs. Their rifles, masterpieces of dwarven engineering, were equipped with intricate mechanisms and long barrels, capable of delivering lethal shots at remarkable distances. At the time, little did they know that an ancient enemy was awaiting them. Not the one they were expecting, but a more sinister one. Zarak Doomwhisperer was a sorcerer of death, obsessed with proving the dominance of chaos magic over the traditional runes used by the dwarves. His motivation was to disrupt and dismantle the defences of the dwarves, proving once and for all the supremacy of the chaos sorcerers. That would take him to carry an ambush against his ancient enemies. The Chaos Dwarfs marched to take positions along the path that the dwarves were sure to pass by. Accompanying him were dozens of Chaos Dwarfs blunderbusses, deadly close-quarters missile infantry that carry a terrible weapon. When the trigger is pressed, these instruments of destruction unleash a hell of spiky iron death that can pierce armour and shields alike. These were dangerous foes to any who stood before them. Also, as a bulk of the army marched a formidable unit of Chaos Dwarf warriors, their armour dark as a moonless night and inscribed with forbidding sigils, glinted with the light of the day. Each warrior carried a hefty axe, its blade honed to a lethal edge, designed for brutal efficiency, and their spiky helmets stood tall as they marched. All given, the sorcerer Zarak Doomwhisperer had under his command a considerable force of Chaos Dwarfs, but over time he had subjugated a large number of goblins from different tribes, most probably from the nearby forest or caves in the region or beyond. They were now his servants, just a bit more than pawns to do his dirty work, but also their low-ranked fighters if the occasion need be. Now marching against their will, but pushed by their cruel Chaos Dwarf masters, they would fight under the banner of Zarak. Bull Centaur Renders were also supporting the Chaos Dwarfs. These monsters, an abominable fusion of Chaos Dwarfs with a bull, results in a monster capable of moving fast across battlefields, while wielding heavy weaponry with frightening ease. Many are the victims who have lost their lives at the edge of their deadly weapons. Thanks to the efforts of Durik Granitefoot and his rangers, the main dwarf force was alerted in advance of the new threat, and the gyrocopters moved quickly to relay the information and survey the enemy forces. For the Chaos Dwarfs led by Zarak Doomwhisperer, the ambush wasn't as successful as they would have wanted, but they were nonetheless going to face the dwarfs in battle. The battle began under the night sky. The cold breeze and the relative serenity of the place was about to have a drastic change. It was precisely the actions of the rangers that drew the first blood in the battlefield. throwing their weapons against a group of goblins that tried to approach them. Many goblins fell during those few minutes of the battle, and the gyrocopters did their part in supporting the rangers with well-placed shots that took many greenskins down. The goblins were terrified at the dwarf weaponry and were hesitant to charge, but they would soon have to, as their cruel Chaos Dwarf masters were behind them, killing any who dared turn tail and try to flee the battlefield. After probing the capabilities and firepower of the Rangers and their air support, Chaos Dwarf warriors began their own advance. Well armoured and with massive shields protecting them, they were more resistant to the missile fire from the Rangers. As the warriors clad in black armour approached them, the Rangers retreated uphill. Granite Foot was successful in maintaining the discipline of his experienced Rangers. Not too far away, the bull centaurs clashed against dwarf lines. The Thunderers did not have much time to properly retreat, mainly due to the speed of the bulls that did not hesitate for a second before committing to the charge. With their huge weapons, they killed many good warriors. As the Chaos Warriors approached, the miners had an explosive surprise for them. Fire engulfed a group of black-armoured Chaos Dwarfs, and many died, consumed by the unrelenting flames. Suddenly the air had filled with a clash of metal, as dwarf miners and warriors, stout and grim, engaged against sinister Chaos Dwarfs and the massive bull centaurs. The clang of weapons sounded louder and louder across the battlefield, as more units clashed against each other. The Chaos Dwarfs, wielding cruelly forged axes and hammers, hacked at their ancestral kin with a ferocity born of dark corruption. As the melee reached a feverish pitch, the Chaos Dwarfs levelled their blunderbusses, unleashing a devastating barrage. The air filled with thunderous blasts and the searing smell of black powder, as lethal shrapnel tore through the ranks of the stalwart dwarves. Each volley wreaked havoc, cutting down seasoned warriors. Willing to show his vast power, Zarak Doomwhisperer muttered some cursed words and manifested a spell that created a deadly vortex just above the noble dwarves. Many of these warriors were lifted in the air, convulsing, and when they fell back to the ground, they were motionless, lifeless as if they were devoid of their soul. Exactly what kind of dark sorcery was taking place, the dwarfs could not tell, but their runes did little to protect them from that purple vortex. The grim spectacle seemed to momentarily still the sounds of the battle, as both sides processed the horrific display of power. Ignited by rage and the roar of their fallen brethren, the dwarfs rallied with renewed vigour. The clangor of axes and clash of shields sounded with more intensity across the battlefield. All could hear metal striking metal, the cries of the wounded, and the relentless commands of dwarf leaders urging their warriors onward. The battlefield became a blur of movement, each side striving to gain the upper hand in the relentless conflict. Dwarf thunderers fired against numerous goblin archers. There were hundreds of them. With each volley, dozens fell, only to be replaced by more and more goblins. With a disciplined rhythm, the result of years of practice, the thunderers reloaded their weapons, aimed and fired, only to do it again and again without tiring. The goblins used their flaming arrows against the dwarfs, but for little effect. Eventually, the firepower was too much for the goblin archers, who after accumulating devastating losses turned and fled. Lord Jagras Cragmaker surged across the battlefield with the force of a storm. Clad in heavy armour, he moved with purposeful strides, rallying his troops with calls to stand firm and fight. At one point, the stalwart lord was seen facing off against 3 Chaos Dwarf warriors simultaneously. With masterful swings of his mighty axe, he felled each adversary in turn, only to move on to the next contested area of the battlefield. His presence was like a beacon of inspiration, as he fearlessly charged into the thickest parts of the fray, lending his axe where the battle raged fiercest. The bull centaurs continued to cause havoc amongst the dwarf lines, but the stubbornness of the dwarves along with the disciplined support of their thunderers managed to inflict a lot of damage to the bull centaurs, until they were forced to flee that part of the fight. But in a bad turn of fate, they ended up running against Granitefoot and his rangers, who were attempting to maneuver across the battlefield to get a better firing line against the armoured dwarves. Suddenly, the rangers were in deep trouble. Their light armour was nothing to protect them against the massive blows from the monstrous bulls. Many rangers were torn apart, blood and guts flew in the air with the unforgiving swings from the monsters. When things seemed lost for the rangers, the Doom Seekers with their massive axes in their hands joined the fight. They had finally identified the opponents they were looking for. The massive bull centaurs would soon learn why the Doom Seekers were feared across the lands. A worthy foe to die against, they screamed as they charged, seeking the glory of a heroic end. As steel clashed with steel, the Doomseekers swung their axes with deadly precision. Each strike aimed to maim or kill. The bull centaurs, towering and formidable, met their charges with equal ferocity, their own weapons creating arcs of destruction. Yet the Doomseekers, fueled by their oath-bound duty to seek death in battle against mighty adversaries, were relentless with their chained axes. Each felled centaur demonstrated the Doomseekers' prowess and their quest for a glorious demise in battle, and indeed many slayers fell fighting against the massive monsters that swung their heavy weapons with reckless abandon. The clash grew even more intense as the dwarfs pressed on, undeterred by the size of their opponents, their eyes alight with the thrill of the fight. Each slayer seeked out the mightiest of the centaurs to bring down with their rune-crafted axes. The bull centaurs gave a worthy fight, but against the orange-haired slayers they could not prevail. Overwhelmed by the sheer tenacity and fearlessness of their attackers, the monsters started to falter. After taking many losses, the bull centaurs made sense of their dire situation and fled the battlefield. This was the turning point of the battle, and the remaining Chaos Dwarfs' forces began to flee in disarray. Zarak Doom Whisperer, the now wounded and tired Chaos Sorcerer, having his magic spent and seen the battle lost, fled the field. Hashut had abandoned him, but at least he was able to escape amidst the chaos of battle, or so he thought. It is said that on the same night, the Rangers reported that the Sorcerer was seen entering the Forest of Gloom. The Rangers pushed the pursuit on him, but they stopped when they saw that the Sorcerer was captured by goblins, perhaps by greenskins of the Bloody Spear tribe. The Rangers decided to leave his fate to the cruel goblins, as they were certain he was about to pay dearly for all the atrocities he had committed. After the fierce clash under the night sky, the dwarf warriors of Barakvar regrouped, tallying their losses with heavy hearts. Despite their weariness and wounds, the decision was made with solemn resolve. They would return to Barrack Var to tend the wounded and mourn the fallen. Yet a steadfast contingent remained behind to continue the search for the lost merchants. Merely 3 days later, as dawn broke over the mountains, the search party returned to Barrack Var with dire tidings. The missing merchants had been found, but tragedy had claimed them during the Great Storm. A merciless landslide had sealed their fate. Efforts to recover the bodies were met with the harsh reality of nature's will, many remaining trapped beneath the earth, their resting places marked but unreachable. In the heart of Barrack Var, the forges grew silent, and the clatter of daily toil ceased as the community gathered to honor the departed, both the lost merchants and the ones lost in battle, in a solemn ceremony. An anvil, the sacred heart of dwarf culture, served as the altar where offerings were laid. Finely wrought axes, shields that had seen many battles, and personal tokens that spoke of each dwarf's life and dreams. Beneath the vaulted stone arches of their ancestral hall, the air filled with the sounds of mourning horns. Each dwarf's life represents a profound loss to an ancient and noble race, one that has witnessed the turning of the ages and the rise and fall of empires. The dwarves, hewn from the very rock of the mountains they call home, embody a history rich with tradition, honor, valor, and a deep connection to the earth. In a world that has evolved beyond the old ways, the dwarves endure to this day. Let us know in the comments below which factions you'd like to see in battle next. If you want to learn more about the history of the dwarfs and how they have endured their many adversaries through the ages, check out this video. We thank you for watching this cinematic battle set in the world of Warhammer, specifically the Border Princes. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one.